Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack the chapter on organizing a perfect sports tournament. Whether you're putting together a weekend league or you're just kind of curious about the hidden architecture behind the global games we all love, the math and planning that goes into a structured tournament are absolutely fascinating.
So, before we get to the actual math, I want you to think about the last major sporting event you watched. How did they decide who plays who? How do they make sure the grand finale features the absolute best teams, rather than just relying on, random luck in the very first round? Well, it turns out there's a highly organized science to this whole process.
To start off, let's look at how the chapter defines what we're actually building here. A tournament is essentially a structured competition. It's held among different teams, it follows a strict, fixed schedule, and it has one ultimate goal: to systematically crown a single, definitive winner. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll cover 1. The magic of tournaments, 2. Choosing your format, 3. The math behind the bracket, 4. What is a bye, 5. Seeding, and 6. League formats and scoring. Starting off with Section 1, the magic of tournaments, which is all about the planning phase. Building a bracket isn't just about the teams themselves. Before you even draw a single line on a whiteboard, you have to consider the season and exactly how much time you have at your disposal. You need to secure your play fields, figure out your equipment, find qualified officials, and of course, look at your budget so you can actually afford to pay those referees. Only once all these pillars are in place can you actually start building. Moving on to Section 2, choosing your format, specifically knockout versus league.
So, you basically have two main paths you can take here. On one hand, you have the high-stakes, sudden-death environment of a knockout tournament. One defeat, and you're packing your bags. On the other hand, you have the marathon endurance of a league tournament, where teams play multiple matches, no matter their record, to accumulate points over an entire season.
All right, Section 3, the math behind the bracket and calculating matches.
For the core of our explainer, we're going to focus pretty heavily on that knockout format. Now, the math behind building a bracket might sound incredibly complex, especially when you have dozens of teams. But the golden rule from the chapter is actually this beautifully simple formula. To find out exactly how many matches you need to schedule, just take your total number of teams, we'll call that n, and subtract 1. That's it, n minus 1. Let's put that into practice. Say you've got an awkward number, like 13 teams competing. You only need to schedule exactly 12 matches to crown a champion. This simple n-1 trick is an absolute lifesaver when you're trying to budget for referee hours and field time.
Which brings us to Section 4. What is a bye? Solving the uneven bracket. Because if you pair 13 teams up, someone is definitely getting left without a partner in that first round.
To fix an uneven bracket, organizers use something called a bye, which is essentially giving a lucky team a free pass to the second round. You calculate the number of byes in 3 easy steps. First, find the next higher power of 2, so numbers like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. Second, take your total number of actual teams. And third, just subtract your teams from that higher power of 2.
Looking back at our 13-team example, it's just basic subtraction. The next higher power of 2 after 13 is 16. So 16 minus 13 leaves you with exactly 3 byes. That means in the very first round, 3 teams get a free pass, and mathematically, that smooths out the entire bracket for the rest of the tournament. When you actually draw out a fixture for, say, 10 teams, this math really comes to life. The next power of 2 is 16, so 16 minus 10 equals 6 byes. And you have to notice how carefully they are placed. The bracket is split right down the middle. 5 teams in the upper half, 5 in the lower half. Those 6 byes are perfectly distributed, with 3 up top and 3 on the bottom.
But what if we have 11 teams? Well, 16 minus 11 means we need 5 byes. Because 5 is an odd number, we obviously can't split them evenly. So the standard rule from the chapter is that the lower half of the bracket gets 1 more bye than the upper half. That means 2 byes up top, 3 at the bottom. It keeps everything meticulously organized. Now, you can't just sprinkle these byes wherever you feel like it. There's a really strict alternating sequence to guarantee balance. The first bye always goes to the very bottom of the lower half. The second goes to the very top of the upper half. The third hits the top of the bottom half, and the fourth takes the bottom of the upper half. This kind of zigzag pattern just repeats until every single bye is placed.
Next up is Section 5, seeding, which is all about keeping things fair.
Imagine spending months organizing a massive tournament, drawing names purely out of a hat, and accidentally forcing the two absolute best teams in the region to play each other in round one. I mean, the finale's completely ruined on day one. Seeding is the antidote to that. It's the process of evaluating strong teams and deliberately placing them on opposite ends of the bracket, ensuring those titans can't possibly clash until the semifinals or the finals.
There's also a cool VIP system called special seeding. In some tournaments, elite, top-ranking teams are actually rewarded for their historical performance. They don't just avoid each other, they get to bypass those perilous early rounds entirely, getting placed straight into the quarterfinals or semifinals.
And finally, Section 6, League Formats and Scoring.
If you decide to pivot to a league format, that sudden death pressure is totally gone and it's replaced by a marathon of endurance. The team that accumulates the maximum points over the season takes the crown. Based on standard scoring, a win nets you 2 points, a draw splits the difference at 1 point for each team, and a loss yields 0. It really is the ultimate test of long-term consistency rather than short-term luck.
To wrap up this explainer, I'm going to leave you with a quick assessment challenge straight from the chapter to test out your new skills. If you're hosting a knockout tournament with exactly 51 teams, what is the next power of 2, and exactly how many buys are you going to need to build a flawless bracket? Work that out and you are officially ready to organize. Next time you're cheering at a championship game, just remember, before the athletes ever even took the field, it was the math that made the magic possible. Thanks for joining me today.